Welcome to another live stream, my friends. Bitcoin has been selling off recently, but I have started building a bit of a long position as we are currently trading in my support zone of interest. I was talking about this possible fib setup earlier in this week on some of my recent streams, as well as even last week. It was already on my radar. There is still some potential for a little bit further downside. I want to talk about that, but that would actually be great because I do have some further laddered entries a little bit lower if we do get that further pullback. However, I wouldn't want to see the bulls lose basically 105.5 thousand. I really want to see the bulls show some signs of life before that. And I will bring up a few things why I think that's absolutely possible at this point. Ideally, I want to see the bulls be able to push us back up towards 120,000 US dollars eventually here, if we can at least find some sort of decent bounce off this support. But with that, yeah, let's get right into it. Let's take a deeper dive on the 4-hour chart here. You guys going to take a look at several different time frames. But yeah, as I mentioned, you guys, basically people have a hard time grasping the idea that things can pull back on longer time frames. And I was talking about this last week that although I was bullish and, aiming for 120K, basically the way I was looking at that, if we lost this micro uptrend, that it would make sense that we would drop down to the support of the bigger range, which is exactly what we've done. And my reasoning for that is this is basically the ideal trade setup that I take when I'm trading the 5-minute chart, for example, which is what I usually trade. So market structure, I generally treat it the same, whether it's the 1 minute, the 5-minute, the hourly, 4-hourly, daily, weekly, whatever. Market structure is market structure. That really doesn't change. All that changes is the size of those swings and the size of the number at the side of the screen here. So I myself, I don't really, when I look at charts, I don't even acknowledge the numbers on the side here because I find that they can actually just kind of get in your head a little bit. They can cloud your judgment a little bit. I mostly just look at market structure for what it is. And when it comes time to actually setting those entries and take profits and this invalidation, stop loss, and that sort of stuff, that's when I actually look at the numbers on the side. Other than that, I'm so much more interested in what the actual structure is doing. Because as I said, if this were a 5-minute chart setup, when we were trading way up here, I wouldn't have been taking new longs up here unless looking for a scalp, off support, something like that, getting that further little climb, whatever. But as far as looking for the actual swing setup, I would be looking at this sort of a pullback because we break our microstructure where here we had our low, lower low, confirmed lower high. We broke that level. If this were a 5-minute chart, and those of you guys in my Telegram should be very familiar with this trade setup, the Stuber fib strategy, and those of you who have been in my live streams for the last, years, you know that I like to look for that market structure followed by that deep correction right into the support zone, basically. So if this was a 5-minute chart, I would not have been looking for those swing long opportunities up at this level while it's running. I'd be more so looking for a pullback to at least the 786. And typically how I do this, and like I mentioned, I have some lower laddered entries on this swing position on the 4-hour, is basically laddering and starting at the 786. 886, 786, 886, and then laddering entries into my swing fail zone, really helping drop my average entry down. Because if I take a loss, I want that to be a very controlled loss. I want to have my invalidation nearby. So rather than having just my entry, up here, right in the middle of this fib pocket so far, rather than, if I do take that loss down toward past my 115 and end up invalidating that Stuber fib setup, at least I've brought my average entry down. It will go from the middle of that fib pocket to somewhere around our double bottom territory. So that would actually tighten up that stop loss a lot. So making the loss significantly smaller if it does happen. Now, understand that means that right now, it's not that I'm going to triple down, quadruple down on my position. It's actually that so far I only have about 40% of my position on the line. So if we end up bouncing from here, great, whatever. It's, less stressful, easier on the brain and the body because, then there's just less stress because we're going straight to the upside. That would be fantastic. However, that means that it would be a much smaller position than I'm intending if I can get those other entries. So I would personally like us to drop a little bit further yet. And is this possible? Is it possible that we bounce for one? And is it possible that we go a little lower first? Well, let's take a look at a few things. One, so this is just based solely on market structure, you guys. The fact that, like I said, we end up breaking that smaller range, get our pullback, and then looking for that bounce. So from a structural perspective, yeah, it makes sense. We broke our downtrend, so now retesting support, very natural. Let's bring a few indicators up. And this is one that I brought up yesterday, you guys, is the liquidations indicator, MDX liquidations. So all these yellow, gold, brown, whatever color you want to call it, all these bars are basically 50 to 100x leverage liquidation levels, heavy liquidity basically. And a lot of that liquidity is starting to build up to the upside. There's really not a lot left below us. It's all starting to form above us. So in that case, I think it makes sense, looking at it from a market maker's point of view, that you would like to grab that liquidity at some point. So I think it makes a lot of sense that we could get a bounce and go target some of that liquidity up higher. That being said, as I mentioned, it's possible we go a little bit lower because I've only hit my first couple of Stuber entries, still have more in this green pocket, and look where the rest of the liquidity happens to be lining up, basically at the start of that green box. So if we got some sort of a swing fail, liquidity grab, and reclaim that green box, that would be absolutely beautiful to see. That would be such a juicy long position to be a part of. I would love to see that. So going to have to see how that goes. Obviously, no matter how many points of confluence you have, nothing's guaranteed. But like I said, that's why when we have those losses, we try and control them. We're not liquidating an entire account when we're taking those losses. We're keeping our losses small, right? So just to take a look at some other indicators here, the ALGO master with my auto fibs. So auto Stuber fibs. And you can see that these auto fibs pulled by AI are agreeing with me. So that's some nice additional confluence for this setup just from a structural point of view. It just gives me confidence that, hey, you know what? I have this fib pull. My indicator pulled the exact same fib. Love to have those things lining up for me right now. So still looks pretty darn good there. Auto charting tools. Actually, let's bring up the other one. You can see that we have a lot of demand below us as well. You can see all those green boxes that it prints. That's all demand zones. So that also lines up quite well with my 115 fib, or just below the Stuber fib in general. There's just a lot of demand down here. At least there has been in the past. So again, just another thing lining up that, yeah, it makes sense that there could be some support nearby. The one indicator that has given me a little bit of a warning at this point, and I've been talking about this one for a while, is unfortunately the MDX trend master printed a lower buy signal followed by a lower sell signal. That can be a very serious warning that the trend is shifting. The one thing to mention is it's possible this already played out. For one, that signal, it did come in a little bit late. It came in after the dump. It would have been much nicer and such an easy short if it would have happened just a few candles earlier above this, because we would have had nice tight invalidation on some sort of a short, even if it was just used as a hedge. That would have been absolutely beautiful. But by the time we dumped down here, I felt like it was a little bit late. That being said, we did retest that indicator and treated it as resistance and got pushed to the downside from there, and which is obviously following the price currently. And that resistance would be around, well, let's just say 111,000. It's actually about 111.3 thousand US dollars right now. But it is slowly dropping towards the price. So that is one indicator that is on my radar that, unfortunately, I don't like that. From a bullish perspective, I don't like that we started printing lower sell signals. I would really like to invalidate that eventually, but it is what it is. So with that, guys, I also want to take a little look at the weekly chart. As I mentioned, from a timing perspective, I have some issues with this weekly chart. Now, not all hope is lost yet. I know I mentioned this on my stream last night, but typically speaking, from our bear market lows to our bull market highs, we have a cycle of about 152 weeks, basically. The last two market cycles have done this from, again, it's not the entire cycle, just from bear market bottom to bull market peak. The last two cycles were exactly 152 weeks. We are currently sitting at approximately 149 weeks. So if that is going to happen again, and it does not have to, because the thing is, yeah, the trend is your friend until it isn't. History, it often rhymes, but it doesn't necessarily need to repeat. However, so far, you can see that these last two cycles, that was very, very much the exact same timing, and we are getting to that time frame right about now. This would give us approximately, if it is going to happen again, that would give us approximately 3 more weeks until we are at that 152-week time limit. I shouldn't say time limit. That makes it sound like it has to happen, and it by no means has to. I'm not really worried about it until we start losing some major structure, but it's definitely something worth mentioning that Bitcoin may be getting very close to a top for the cycle. And if that is going to happen, that 3-week time period would line up very well for getting some sort of a bounce off the 4-hour support, and then setting, if we could ideally get back up to my purple box around 120,000, just because that would be my bearish fib pull, basically looking for macro resistance. You can see the purple box there. So at this point, we're going to have to see, right? Nothing's guaranteed, but there's a few things that are lining up that I have my concerns that it's not so much that I'm bearish on Bitcoin, or especially the market as a whole. I think that there is still room to run this bull market. However, I'm a little more standoffish on Bitcoin compared to altcoins, because I really have a feeling that when Bitcoin does top, whether it's I think even if it tops, hopefully it ends up being some sort of distribution range where it actually takes its time trading sideways, which would give time for the Bitcoin dominance chart to continue dumping off a cliff, which would give a nice time frame for altcoins to continue running for the last phase of the market cycle, basically. But we'll have to see, right? Because here's the thing, guys. Now that there's ETFs involved, there's much bigger players in the space. I know everyone says this cycle's different because there's bigger players. Although that's true, every market cycle has had significantly bigger players in the space. There is always way more money coming into the space every cycle. So the fact that this cycle is different actually makes it the same, that there's just bigger players. But that being said, when gold had its ETF launch, I believe it went on an 8 or a 10-year bull market rather than a typical 4-year cycle. So, maybe we see something like that with Bitcoin as well. We're just going to have to see. I'm not overly, generally speaking, I'm not a time analyst. I'm not a fundamental analyst. I just draw the charts, and I like to trade my fibs, trade market structure, and that sort of thing. But this is very much on my radar for now, as just keeping it open as a possibility. Again, it's not that I'm bearish. It's just that I don't want to be completely blindsided by listening to tweets and announcements saying that Bitcoin's going to 500,000 and all these ridiculous targets. I don't want to be blindsided by that kind of a thing. So I want to keep a real level head about things. And guys, for those of you who do appreciate my level head on the markets and just, trading in the charts as they come, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Would do me a huge favor. Obviously, a very new channel. It helps with the algorithms big time if you hit that like button. And of course, subscribing to the new channel so you do not miss these live streams. And guys, for those of you who are interested in seeing more examples of how I pull Fibonacci's, how I look at market structure, some of my trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the markets, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen. Get involved there. Like I said, I've been trading Aster a lot lately, you guys. This is a setup that I just mentioned this in the Telegram. Hit my last entry just a couple of nights ago. Played out beautifully. I am not in that position anymore, but it played out absolutely beautifully, and just adding to the stack for September, because September trading altcoins has just been absolutely phenomenal, you guys. Hitting a 73.75% win rate so far across 80 trades this month. absolutely huge. So again, if that's something that you want, if you're interested in seeing how I use indicators, market structure, fibs, all that sort of stuff, do yourselves a favor, get in there. That being said, guys, with Bitcoin, like I say, I am hoping to see some sort of a bounce, but if we come down and grab my other entries, so be it. Lower time frame, yeah, we've just been trading sideways for the last couple of days, right in that Stuber fib pocket, basically between the 786, 886, between these purple lines. Average entry kind of right in the middle at this point. Beautiful to see. The Bitcoin dominance is still looking pretty fantastic to me. I mean, we've broken some very serious market structure several times, right? My upward trending diagonal support lines, we've dropped a couple of them at this point, and some very large ones. I mean, this one goes back all the way to November of 2022. And this range pull in general is over 4 years of data. If I zoom out here, the top of this was basically the start of 2021, end of 2020. That is where this fib pull began. So almost 5 years here. But yeah, I want to see this continue dumping. I love to see, actually, before I go further, I was mentioning that I treat structure as structure, whatever time frame it is. Here's a perfect example. This fib pull is 5 years, almost 5 years of data on a daily chart here. And just notice that where it ended up getting topped out here is we basically tested that 786, and that's where we're getting rejected. Now, the great thing from how I'm looking at things here and how I'm looking at, wanting to continue trading the altcoins and that sort of good stuff is playing this like a typical Stuber fib for the Bitcoin dominance here. We haven't even hit my first target. We have not hit the 0.5 fib. We definitely haven't hit the 214 fib, which would be my overall target. Now, since this is a daily chart, this is a very big chart. It would likely take quite a while to get down to this level, but that's exactly why I'm hoping that Bitcoin can kind of, even if it tops out, hopefully it can at least remain healthy and do some sort of ranging price action to give us some time for Bitcoin dominance to drop off a cliff, hit some of my other targets, and let the altcoins run. The S&P 500 as well, on a very strong uptrend still, even on the micro trend, just setting higher highs and higher lows. And yesterday's stream, I actually outlined this order block here. So basically just taking the red candle before we push to new highs, right? Because here's where we had our basically the last little push from the bears before pushing to new highs. And so far, we are holding that block where the bulls stepped in. We are so far holding this as support. If we end up dropping this, I would start to have my concerns that we could see a bearish retest. For example, doesn't have to play out that way, but we lose that level, get a bounce to 786, 886, something like that, get FOMO into resistance for people again, and then end up wrecking it. But we'll have to see what happens. And guys, truthfully, crypto and the S&P, crypto and the stock market in general hasn't really been going side by side recently. They've been kind of doing their own things a little bit, but overall, I would say it's just, showing signs that there isn't a ton of fear in the market or anything like that. The market in general is still just looking healthy as long as we can hold this trend. And bringing up the trend master, we still have this nice buy trend that we printed a long time ago, but it is currently just below the price a little bit of the S&P. So, I mean, even if we drop a little bit, at least there is potential support from an indicator like that. That actually reminds me, I did want to bring that up on the weekly Bitcoin chart as well, is the trend master indicator. So notice I had that purple line set as our micro higher low on the trend basically. And the weekly trend master is actually lining up very close with that right now. So a little bit of confluence that if we drop lower, even towards 98,000, I'm really hoping that the bulls can step in at that point. But if we start losing those very serious structure levels with our timing lining up with a potential time frame top, that's where I will start to get a little more concerned on what's happening with Bitcoin at that point. Yeah, like I said, Bitcoin dominance. Oh, I did want to bring up as well, the trend master on the daily here for the Bitcoin dominance chart. So right now we are basically flirting with resistance, right? We are basically getting rejected off the blue lines of the Trendmaster indicator. So flirting with resistance right now. So even though we got that little climb the last few days, kind of, well, most of the week, as we saw crypto pull back a little bit, we naturally see Bitcoin dominance climb up a little bit because people don't want to have that high risk appetite if the market's looking weak. But so far, we're at resistance. I would love to see us get a nice rejection here and push to new lows. That would be so nice for the altcoin market. And speaking of altcoins, I want to take a look at Aster because, like I said, this has been kind of my coin of choice lately. What can we say about Aster? I want to zoom out to the 1 hour. Ooh, so we actually got our first buy signal on the 1 hour chart. So far, we still do have support. We have a nice trend going, even though, yeah, we obviously saw a big pullback. That's just because guys, this coin is so volatile right now. I mean, even from where we bounced just the other day to where we are right now, that's a 20%, 20% where we are right now from where we bottomed here on this little pullback, just to show how volatile this actually is. Because when trading something like this, when it is this volatile, it can be very risky, right? Because the ranges look a lot smaller than they are. And it's very easy to get liquidated if you're trading with leverage on something like that. So if you're ever taking a trade, I mean, this should go without saying, but anytime you're trading any asset, you should always know how big of a loss you're going to take if you end up taking that loss. As traders, it's very important to plan for losing a trade because you want to know what worst case scenario is basically. But yeah, if we do end up getting a pullback from Aster here, looking at the 1 hour chart, I mean, I would be looking at basically pulling a fib from the bottom here up to where we've topped on this little rally. The buy support would actually be a little bit higher, but as long as we could hold this kind of a range, I mean, the overall trend of this coin still looks good at this point. Again, it's going to be very volatile. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but not looking so bad at this point. On a lower time frame, let's see what kind of trade setup can we look at here? Anything catching my eye for something new for a lower time frame? One thing that is catching my eye right now, just because of the MDX Trendmaster still printing, you can see it's still printing lower buy signals and lower sell signals. So this indicator on the 5 minute is still showing a downtrend. However, something that has happened recently is we did break this lowest sell signal, right? This would have been our pivot point where we ended up finding resistance, printing that signal here. We have broke it. So even though we're coming back for some sort of a retest, just dropping a little bit lower, whether it's just retesting this buy trend, whatever, seeing a little bit of a pullback, but we did break that sell signal. And that's a nice first sign for me that this could be flipping bullish once again. For one, we may be finding support right now. Looks like this indicator, I just see a little blue dot down here. So it's starting to print the other part of the indicator where trying to reverse from there. So if we end up basically holding above $2 would be fantastic to see. But if we drop even further, I would be interested in looking for some sort of a Fibonacci setup. If I pull from basically our bottoms of where this trend ended, basically, to where we have currently topped. And if we get a pullback, I would basically be starting to look for support around the 786. And just like what I was talking about with Bitcoin, it's not that I enter my entire position at the 786. If I take this, I would be looking at laddering in something like this just to really help pull my average entry down. Because again, it's way more volatile than it looks. If we were to go just from the 786 to below the 115, I mean, that's over a 5% move on its own to the downside. And that's just a very small range on the 5 minute chart, you guys, right? So 5% may not seem like a big deal. But if you think, hey, I'm going to take a trade at the 786 on a 20x trade, all of a sudden that invalidation isn't a stop loss, it's a liquidation, right? So very important to pay attention to when trading volatile assets, especially. However, any asset you're trading, you should always have a good idea of what kind of a loss you're going to take. For example, let's just say it as an example, if I end up laddering in 20% of my position, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20% kind of a thing for my entire entry, my average entry will end up somewhere in this zone, closer to double bottom territory. And in that case, all of a sudden that loss becomes a lot more bearable, right? Because then it's only about a 2% invalidation. So obviously on 20x, that's still a 40%, which that the whole leverage thing, I mean, to each their own. I typically use high leverage, but I understand by doing so that I can use small margin. So, uh, just understand that not everybody uses the same leverage. At the end of the day, what matters is how much money you actually lose if you're going to lose that position, or how much money you make on the way up, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at there for Aster at this point. Hype getting a nice little bounce, kind of same thing, right? With Hype, we ended up, it's unfortunate, took a little bit of profits off of a trade that I took yesterday in the live stream, actually. But actually, I shouldn't say that. Ended up taking a small loss, but with this higher buy signal here, ended up taking I think it was 20% of my position off the table near the highs there. So I at least softened the blow when we came back down and invalidated that setup. Basically, I was looking for a scalp sized risk for a potential trend setting signal. Basically, since we got a higher sell signal, higher buy signal, I was really hoping that was going to turn into a nice trend holding above this level, but it never happened. At this point, we had a series of lower sell signals. So that was a big warning from this indicator as well. Lower buy signal followed by a lower sell signal pushed us to the downside. But just like I was just talking about with Aster, is we've actually broke that lower sell signal, right? We're actually still above it at this point, but the fact that we broke it, period, that's a great sign to see. So even if we pull back at this point, I would be looking at basically the same thing like what I was looking at with Aster there, is just pulling a fib from our lows of where this trend basically bottomed and looking for some sort of a pullback to this. But so far, this indicator is holding the trend, holding support so far to the upside on the lower time frames here. So we'll have to see. Hype has been a very strong performer this entire cycle. I just want to remove my drawings. Basically on the daily time frame, you guys, ever since my original buy signal, I mean, I've been holding spot with Hype since about 18 US dollars. Just on an absolute mission, just continued setting higher highs, higher lows, just a beautiful price discovery. So we did end up losing a bit of a trend up here. That gives me a little bit of concern here, especially when you have something like Aster that's backed by CZ, Binance, something like that as direct competition for a decentralized exchange. Yeah, I have a little bit of concerns there, but not all hope is lost. I mean, we're still holding above this $36.40 level. As long as we're holding candle bodies above that, basically I'll be feeling fairly good about Hype at this point. Again, very strong performer in general this cycle, so love to see it. We do have, it's currently sitting at resistance on the 4 hour, but again, the shorter time frames are at least starting to show some signs of strength here. So love to see it. Basically, my coins of interest lately for trading altcoins is Aster, Hype, Solana. Those are kind of the big ones that I've enjoyed trading lately. Ethereum as well, although kind of in the middle of a bigger range that I'm watching right now. So that's a little bit tricky right now. Speaking of that, actually, Solana, I know I mentioned this yesterday as well. We did get a nice bounce right off the 786. I mentioned this in a stream earlier in the week, that basically my reasoning for pulling this fib, very similar. I love mixing the Stuber fib strategy with the strategy that I use with the trending signals on the MDX Trendmaster. And right here, you can see this is where we printed our most recent higher buy signal, was back here. And that means that we found support right about here where we got our pivot. So that's why I have the fib pulled like this. Also, the fact that we reached my 250 US dollar target with Solana. I still think we can push higher. That was just the start of resistance, but an immediate reaction like that, not all too uncommon. So just like right here, right? Again, we test the opposite 786 and get that immediate reaction like that. So I would love to see Solana end up holding this. It could drop further and still be healthy, in my opinion. I would love to see it stay above 175 US dollars. Below that, I'll start to get a little bit concerned about the trend, just because we would be losing this higher buy signal trend on the 4 hour. So that would be a bit of a warning to me. Trollcoin, this one has had some crazy momentum lately. Recently listed on several exchanges. I think I saw it on crypto.com, definitely launched on Coinbase. It's just starting to launch on a lot of places. But guys, this one, I mean, I've been talking about this one on these live streams since months ago when we were trading at about 1 cent, just because it was a typical Stuber fib. I had no idea if it was going to take off like that. I didn't know it was going to do a 25x for me, but I was looking at it just from a chart perspective, a typical Stuber fib setup, and I was buying in those levels. So yeah, basically around 1 cent, and absolutely took off from there. A lot of people claiming that this coin is dead, but I personally just see it coiling up in a falling wedge, which is often a continuation pattern after a big move. So yeah, after something pumps 25x, consolidation is very natural. And so far, it's looking like we're holding this falling wedge. We even had a little fake out liquidity grab of the support of that falling wedge, and then hammered to the other side with momentum. So I would love to see some follow through with that. I know there's a lot of volume on this coin now. Compared to other meme coins, there's a lot of interest here from, even the normies, even my own dad bought some troll coin. Proud son moment right there. So just to show you how, as far as meme coins go, it's the type of coin that I feel like is an easy one to onboard normies who aren't familiar with meme coins, people who want to get into meme coins and low cap coins and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the meme troll face is arguably one of the most popular memes out there, or at least the most recognizable. So to see that as a coin, and with some follow through and good volume and a very active community and so many things going for it, I really have high hopes with that one. Obviously, it's high risk. Meme coins, low cap coins, they're very high risk, currently sitting at about $157 million market cap, I believe. So yeah, understand it's high risk, very volatile. Like even from where it topped to where we bottomed here, it's like a 70% correction to the downside. That is something that a lot of people would say makes a dead coin. However, a lot of meme coins do that. Even the ones that don't just rug to zero, right? That's just very typical for low cap, high volatile coins. So it's risky. But this is one I'm mostly looking at spot trading and just kind of accumulating on the dips and stuff like that. But yeah, that's definitely my meme coin of choice this cycle. I could see it doing well, but obviously the market maker doesn't always care about how I feel or my or my opinions. So we'll see what happens there. Sorry, one sec. Sorry, still battling a bit of a cold here. So let me catch up on the chat a little bit here. Crypto Jacker. The numbers are playing with my eyes here. Been watching me since day one. Keep up the good work. Do not sleep on MYX token. Rode that from 0.5 to 18.5. Wow, beautiful. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here with me since I started streaming here. That is fantastic. Love to hear it. Love to see that you're still coming back here. That's always great input, because that means I'm doing something right if you're entertained and learning something, hopefully. So guys, if you do appreciate these live streams, you appreciate my level-headed take on the market, not getting too wrapped up in fundamentals, and I'm trading charts, not tweets and that sort of thing. If that's something that interests you, do me a favor, or more so do yourself a favor if you're interested in seeing more examples of how I look at Fibonacci's, market structure, some of my trade setup ideas and theories, just my overall thoughts on the market. In the private Telegram there where I've been sharing some of my trade setup ideas and that sort of stuff. But also, if you do appreciate these live streams, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to this new channel, because that'll go a long way. Obviously, as a brand new channel, very small follower count, but hoping to end up climbing quickly here. So every thumbs up really counts, you guys. So much appreciated. Thank you. Other coins are Hopium tokens, and Hopium does a slow death. Yeah, there is a lot of Hopium out there. So many coins have such ridiculous price targets, and like especially when you start looking at XRP targets, I just can't help myself but shake my head when I've seen targets such as above 50,000 US dollars for XRP, because Bitcoin can get that high, so XRP can too. Those people who say that have no idea how market cap works, and I don't think that they're going to just print literally quadrillions of dollars and pump it right into XRP. Can't see that. But with every coin, even Bitcoin, I see so many Hopium posts about Bitcoin as well, saying that, we're going to 1 million this cycle, 500,000 this cycle, 400,000, even 250,000, whatever. Honestly, guys, I mean, it could happen. That's the thing. It's just we don't have anything in the chart suggesting those levels at this point. Obviously, if we set a new high and if we just keep staircasing higher until we get there, fantastic. But I'm just not interested in taking ballpark theories and just guessing random numbers because I feel like that's how high it should go. I want the chart to prove that it's actually going there. So I'd rather see it continue staircasing, which, to be fair, Bitcoin has been moving quite slow this cycle and doing just that, right? The fact that even we had this consolidation here, push a little higher. So now if we come down, at least we have some support there, right? The fact that Bitcoin has been, staircasing higher with higher highs and higher lows rather than just a straight moonshot, that is healthier in my opinion. And it gives potential for the cycle to run a little bit further just because it's a lot more healthy, right? So maybe we see those ridiculous targets, but yeah, there is absolutely so much hopium in this space, especially when you follow social media and stuff like that. There's a lot of interesting theories out there that I would not take too seriously. I love to hear it. Glad you're on your own channel now, buddy. Love your TA, no BS or FUD, just realism in full effect. Yeah, thank you. That's honestly what I really try to do here. I'm not here to look for clickbait. I'm not here doing that sort of thing. I just want to look at the charts for what they actually are. I want to trade the charts. I don't want to just give those false hopium, get my own followers wrecked just so that I can get more clicks and that sort of thing. I try to keep things real, as real as I possibly can for you guys. And obviously I'm going to be wrong sometimes. That's totally fair. Every trader is, but I try and be the voice of reason in this market. And whether that's at a bearish time or a bullish time, I really just try and keep a level head about things. Because the market, at the end of the day, the market doesn't give a shit about our feelings or our opinions. We just have to see what ends up happening. So just taking it day by day, chart by chart. Driving and listening. Well, hey, glad to be of assistance, giving you some entertainment and hopefully some learning while you're driving. Oh, nice. You've been in the Telegram from the start as well and been watching Tone since 2017. Nice. Oh, that's awesome, man. That's great. Love to hear it. XRP Fed coin. Yeah. BTC has been pirated. The miners pumping spam on the network are killing it. Yeah, that's an interesting theory, saying that the rate cuts would be bearish for the price. I can see where you're coming from. Now, so generally speaking, rate cuts and money printing and all that sort of stuff, it should be very bullish for the cycle moving forward, basically until it ends up topping out or whatever. From a fundamental point of view, it should be a bullish metric. And it has been, around COVID, for example, it was very bullish for the market. That being said, ever since the start of this year, everybody has been positioning themselves, assuming that rate cuts were happening. Everyone just knew that they were coming, and everyone did position themselves accordingly. Everyone had that FOMO of, oh, that's going to happen, and then we're going to moon our bags. But realistically, that may just be, buy the rumor, sell the news event. Does not have to be. I want to be clear about that. As I just said, fundamentally, it should be bullish. Maybe this sell-off was just a little bit of maybe this is the fake out, right? Trying to fake everybody out before we start pumping into the stars. But at this point, I don't know. It's I have mixed feelings about that one. And I was saying as well, leading up to it, that there's a chance that the rate cuts are priced in, because basically, when was it? I don't even remember when did they start talking about rate cuts a whole bunch? I want to say it was like in April. Maybe it was back here where we started, or January. Sorry, that's what I meant. Basically, when Trump got sworn in, it was basically factored in that rate cuts are going to happen. And that's where people started positioning themselves as so. So, yeah, we're going to have to see. Again, I don't trade fundamentals, but I still do consider them with things like that, just to see, does it make sense? Just because so many people get absolutely blindsided by fundamentals. So I will consider them, but I want the chart to prove that they are going to act in such a way. So I often say that things like, oh, fundamentals don't matter. And that's not exactly true. Fundamentals obviously matter. It's just that there's a lot of people who are trying to trade 5-minute charts based on fundamentals. I literally know one person in my life who trades fundamentals very well, and he is not trading a 5-minute chart, an hourly chart, or even a 4-hourly chart, even a daily chart. He's trading a weekly chart, if anything. So he does it well, but he has very different expectations than what a lot of, crypto degenerates feel when they start reading headlines and stuff like that. So when it comes to, meetings, even the FOMC meetings, all that sort of stuff, I literally try to ignore them. I will pay attention to when they're going to happen, just to know that a volatile event is happening. But if anything, I will try and not trade during that time, let the charts calm down, pick a direction, choose which way the structure is going to start building, and then start trading it again. As I've said many times, I trade charts, not tweets. And if that is something that interests you, again, if you're more interested in looking at actual technical analysis, not so much fundamentals, tweets, announcements, all that sort of good stuff, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen, get in there. And again, yeah, just more examples of how I pull fibs, how I look at market structure, all that sort of good stuff, you guys. Hey. How many people? We got 21 people watching here. Guys, if you could do me a favor once again, please hit that thumbs up. Just do me a huge favor there and help the algorithm, since this is such a brand new channel here, you guys. Seriously appreciate you guys being here with me. So yeah, if you could just hit that thumbs up button and hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you do not miss these live streams moving ahead. Because as I said earlier, I will be streaming on this channel full-time come the end of the month, basically. Right now, still doing just the first little intro over at the Financial Summit, and then moving over, just so we don't leave anybody behind, because not everybody is aware of the new channel yet. But by the end of the month, going to be here full-time. So yeah, make sure you're subscribed to the crypto trading channel, where we will trade anything crypto. Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, meme coins, shit coins, you name it. It's all fair game for me here. Speaking of meme coins, I do want to take a little bit deeper of a dive on Troll. I wanted to see if the MDX trend master is showing any sort of obvious trend. We do have a buy signal. We are holding it as support very nicely here as we break out of my falling wedge. So I love to see that. But that being said, even if we do end up pulling back, not necessarily the end of the world. It would actually be quite natural to get this breakout followed by retesting that resist support flip and before carrying on higher. But that being said, I am hoping that it's already happened. The fact that we got our 1, 2, 3 exact touch points of this resistance before breaking out to the upside, and then doing a real good job of flipping that resistance to support right here. So I am hopeful that the trend master can end up holding us as support here. Even on the 4-hour, we have a buy signal now. So they are lower buy signals. We have lower sell signals that, as you know, as per tradition, that is a bit of a red flag to me. But I think this is still looking pretty good just from a structural point of view at this point. Even on the micro trend here, like here we would have had our low, we would have set a lower low, and we set another lower low. That meant this was my confirmed lower high on the trend. So we broke that downtrend, right? So we broke a falling wedge, we broke a downtrend on the 4-hour here. There's a lot to be said for this. I think that troll is looking very nice at this point, actually. Hype looks like it's trying to make another push higher. I would love to see it. Aster as well. I would love to see it end up holding this buy trend and just pushing higher, especially if the 5-minute, I mean, not long ago when this thing really gets trending, and the reason why yesterday I actually ended up adding to my position a little bit on this, which it ended up, I still took profits on that position. Unfortunately, I brought my average entry up and then had to bump up my stop loss, got stopped out at the rest in some profits. But my reasoning for doing that was just because I was hoping for this to become a very strong trend, because the other day, those of you in the Telegram were very familiar with this, but for several days, we basically printed higher buy signals here. And it was so profitable because even right from our next one, notice that, hey, we get a higher buy signal. So let's just see how this acts, right? So this higher buy signal, okay, where did it pivot from? Right here. That would be my new invalidation, right? Then we get another higher buy signal. Okay, move that invalidation up. No, we just continue flying to the upside. Another higher buy signal. Let's move that invalidation up to that pivot point. Same thing, going higher. Higher buy signal. Another higher buy. Another higher buy. Another higher buy. So if you were just playing that trend, I mean, that was absolutely insane. From this buy signal to where it ended up topping out, this coin moved 55%. And that's just based off of a trend on the 5-minute chart, you guys. So that's why I very much so like playing the Trend Master as such, combining that with the Fibonacci's. Beautiful trade strategies, both of them. I love them both, and I really like when I can combine them both. So I would love to see later today we end up printing some sort of a higher sell signal on the MDX Trendmaster followed by a higher buy. I will absolutely be looking at longing the shit out of that again and just playing that trend. If it doesn't work out, then at least I'm kind of looking at it as, like, let's just say theoretically, obviously this isn't the case because there's not even a higher buy or sell signal yet, but let's just pretend we got a higher buy signal right now. That would basically cause my pivot point to be my new invalidation. And I would love to take a nice big juicy long position on something like that, because the invalidation is basically a scalp size loss, versus if we're going to get one of those really big rallies and we do get it turning into a trend, that's a very big potential gain versus the very small potential loss, basically. So I would love to see that come in later today. If I do notice that later today while I'm out, I will be throwing it in the Telegram channel, letting my followers know there what I'm seeing, basically, and where my invalidation is. So again, if that's something that interests you, you want to see more examples, how I'm pulling Fibonacci's, how I'm looking at market structure, some of my trade setup ideas and theories, just my overall thoughts on the market in general, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code there, get in my channel. That being said, guys, I actually have to take off here. So I am going to get going. So I hope you guys found this stream useful today. Please be sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the new channel if you haven't already. You don't want to miss these live streams moving forward. And like I said, I will be here full time starting the end of the month. So looking forward to it. Love having my own channel here. And yeah, I will be streaming here a whole bunch moving forward. So that being said, my friends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over. So again, one last time, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.